What are we going to do today? My screen is messing around. Shoulders. Now, I'm going to talk about frozen shoulders today. So it gets called frozen shoulder, but sometimes you might hear it's called adhesive capsulitis. That's the medical term for it. Frozen shoulder. I might use both, but I'll probably refer to that. So this is your shoulder. Happens to be a right one. Collarbone at the front here. That's the bit you can feel there. This is your shoulder blade at the back, and that sits against your rib cage. And this is the humerus, so the arm bone sits in here. This bit along here that you can see here is the acromion. And you can see it's actually part of the shoulder blade. So if you see the shoulder blade here, this is called the spine, and it forms around the acromion. So that's the space underneath if you looked at it sideways on. So if you went across here and felt that, that's what that bony bit at the end is. And if you drop off the edge, there's a bit of a gap. Yeah, I've got a tiny little gap. And then the top of the humeral head that you can feel. Now, I have done a video on rotator cuff. So if you want to have a look at that, you can have a look at that. What is a frozen shoulder? Well, really what it is the capsule which surrounds all of the shoulder like this shrinks to about 10% of what it should be. So obviously there's the capsule in the shoulder is looser than the one around the hip, so to allow mobility. So as you move your arm up, it rotates around, the humeral head rotates down and around to allow it to clear the acromion, which that's what your rotator cuff does, which is in the other video. And then obviously comes back down again. The capsule that surrounds the joint keeps the fluid inside, provides some stability, allows quite a bit of movement. In a frozen shoulder, the capsule shrinks so much so that this humeral head can't move in its socket like it would do. And instead of when you take your arm up, you get about 30 degrees of movement before the whole lot, the shoulder blade will slide around to allow your arm to move a bit more. And then it will slide back again. So it works with the shoulder joint. When it's when it shrinks and tightens, the whole lot comes together as one unit. There's no sort of separation of that. So you get this restriction in movement. And how we know it's a frozen shoulder is that all of your shoulder movements are will start to shrink. I've had a long day. Reduce. So things I'm going to stand up and show you, if you can see things like this. One of the things I look at is arms out here, so that'll disappear. So you might say this is my good arm, that'll go out and that one might get stuck. You might notice a little bit of movement difference between the two. Taking your hand behind your back, that's quite commonly one of the first things that will tighten up. But all of your movements in that direction, movements in that direction, taking your hand behind your head will all start to reduce because the capsule shrinks slowly over time. So the movement goes slowly over time. Now, a few things to note. When you first start with a frozen shoulder, it isn't always easy to know because you often start with pain. The reduction in the movement doesn't come till later on. So you might start with pain. And how do we know it's a shoulder problem? It's because the pain will come over the top here like that. Okay. Come over the top here like that. That tells us often that it's the shoulder joint that's giving you pain or problems. It's not the only thing that can give you pain over there, but that would happen. So you'd often get pain, but you might get pain a little bit running down your arm. It's because the nerves that come underneath the armpit and go down the arm, as the capsule shrinks from underneath the armpit, it might irritate the nerves first. So it can be mistaken for referred pain from the neck sometimes. It is very difficult to say because you might find you get treatment for it and it works for a bit, but it might keep coming back. So if someone comes to me with that and I treat it and it comes back, then I might start to think, I wonder if I'm developing a frozen shoulder here. So it starts, and the sort of this sort of pattern frozen shoulder comes through. It tends to come in through. This is not exact science, but this is what tends to present with. You get this first period where it's painful, and as it gets more painful, the movement deteriorates, so you get less and less movement. Then you sit in a stage where actually it's not too painful, but you just haven't got any movement in it. No matter what you do, it doesn't move. And then you get this third phase where the pain starts to return, but so does your movement. However long it takes to get to the point where it's less painful and stiff, it will be the same amount of time where it's stiff, and it'll be the same amount of time roughly when it gets better. And it often gets referred to as freezing, frozen, thawing. That's Frozen Shoulder. So people say to me, how long does it last? I would say most people probably at least 6-9 months is a short term. It can last a lot longer than that. Some people a year, some people 18 months, some people can last 3 years. Okay. It varies in degrees. So some people can have more pain but more movement. Some people have less pain but loads of movement. But pain is very much an individual thing. There'll be loads of videos on pain. Can you do anything about it? I saw someone today, which is why it's prompted my decision to make a video on it today, because he had it in one arm and he got it in another arm. And the first time he'd had it, he'd put up with it quite a while. Then it started to get stiff and he thought, I can't hardly move this. So he was given an x-ray to make sure it wasn't anything else going on, like arthritis or other stuff. It was fine bony wise. So they gave him an injection. And he was telling me that he'd had 3 injections and the physio absolutely hammered it and it got better. Like, I've been physioing for a long time, and I definitely have been that person who's mobilized, shall we say, a shoulder joint. Because when I first started, in many years, we didn't know that we probably couldn't change it. Now, we're talking about a true frozen shoulder here because there are other things that can create it. Can look the same. It can look like a frozen shoulder and it isn't. So we're talking about a proper frozen shoulder. Okay, one that we're absolutely certain of it is. We can help you with the pain in the first instance. So there's lots of things we can do for pain relief, and sometimes that might involve an injection. Injections do not always work, and they are only for pain relief. If it's a true frozen shoulder, you might feel better after injection, but it won't necessarily improve your movement, especially if you're in that first stage. It's going to get stiff. So we're not going to dramatically improve your movement, if at all. Is it worth having an injection, and when you've recovered from, you need a week after that, trying some mobilizations with a physio? Yeah, why not? But I wouldn't be doing it for weeks and weeks and months and months. If it's not making a difference, it's not making a difference. And you'd need to have quite a lot of intensive physio, maybe a couple of times a week. You need to definitely have to be doing your exercises little and often throughout the day. If you're improving the mobility of a joint, you need to be doing 6, 8, 10 times a day. All right, little and often. But it can be something we need to do. I don't practice acupuncture anymore. Soft tissue massage can help. So anything that you feel helps you have less pain, go for it, During the stiff phase, we can give you exercises to maintain your mobility, but it's stiff. And then as it gets better, then yeah, definitely. If you want some physiotherapy, we don't know, it might help speed the process up. So it's certainly worth a try with exercises and so on. This gentleman was telling me that he got better after 3 injections. Well, it's unusual now for us to give more than one. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, especially for a frozen shoulder. Would we do that now? Would I give someone, I'd say no, if it didn't work the first time your injection, it didn't really last. And mobilizing it and make it more sore, you have to question that, what you're actually trying to achieve. I suspect he was probably at the end of the frozen shoulder anyway, and that's why it improved. And we talked about that, and he said, yeah, you probably had it a long time by that point. I think he'd had it a year overall. So he came to me, and I'll tell you about this because it relates to pain as well. He said that this feels different and it feels a bit worse. So of course I examined it because it might not be, but it was. It's got all the, when I felt it myself, I couldn't make it move anymore. It's really sore. And he said, why does it feel worse? Well, first of all, 2 shoulders will never be the same. But he told me he's right-handed, and because he'd known how stiff his left arm had been, he was really worried about keeping his job or being able to perform in his job because of he knew how stiff it was going to be. So he was worrying about it. He knew how long it had lasted last time. He knew how much input he'd needed to get it better in his mind. And he knew how much it had limited him. So we were talking about why you experience more pain. First of all, pain's very unique to you as an individual. I could have exactly the same condition, okay, injure exactly the same tissues, but my pain would be different to yours. Pain is always generated by the brain, always, without question, no different from one human to another. It doesn't matter whether you've broken a bone, sprained an ankle, or got a frozen shoulder. Your brain gives you the pain experience. You get messages. So I was telling him the tissues around his shoulders, the muscles, the nerves, the joint itself, the ligaments around it, are all firing off messages through the spinal cord to the brain, and the brain's receiving them, and it's trying to interpret that data. It is deciding whenever it receives a message, hello, alert, alert, right, from your body, that it decides whether you should experience pain, and it makes that decision based on what you can feel and see, your senses, but also your memory. He remembered last time the impact it had on his life, so that added a degree of threat, and that's what the brain decides. How much pain you need depends on the threat. So it's making all these decisions and judgments, and he's got more pain because the consequences for him this time round would be worse because he already knew what it was. Last time he didn't know. And he went, oh yeah, you're right. He said, I am more worried about it this time. It is feeling worse because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can't be like this for a year. How am I going to manage my job? He's got a physical job. He goes, you're right, I am. So we talked about how he could reduce his pain because we can't change the condition. So we went through and talked about how strategies for managing his job, reminding him that frozen shoulder is self-limiting, which is the best thing ever. That means it will get better on its own. It will eventually get better. However long it takes, you'll get your shoulder back and the pain will go and the shoulder will become more mobile. So he went, yeah, you're right, it does get better. I said to him, how long have you been in this particular situation? He said he'd been getting stiff now for 7 months. So although he's getting stiff, he was already into that second phase. And he went, oh yeah, I am. I said, you may or may not get as stiff as the last time. And he went, oh, okay. I gave him some exercises to try and maximize his movement, which he didn't have at that point last time. So he got some exercises from me and advice about trying to maintain the mobility, which he didn't have last time. And the other thing I answered him was, he said to me, am I going to do any harm if it's hurting me? And I said, no, it just hurts, but you won't do any harm. And that was a big moment of, oh, so if I can cope with the pain, with the movement I'm doing, pushing into the pain. He's not pushing himself to agony, but what he was trying to say to me was, if I move and it hurts, I'm not going to make it worse, am I? I said, no. And all of a sudden he went, oh, it's not so bad then. And that really helped alleviate his pain, even though I haven't changed the structure and I've given him a diagnosis that I can't particularly influence. So I want you to be reassured, there's actually quite a lot you can do that isn't necessarily hands-on. It is self-limiting. It will get better. It's just how much time. One other thing to note is that we know we don't really know what causes it. We know there are risk factors, being diabetic, having had it before, trauma to your arm. There are multiple things that might bring it on. But you will get over it. So I hope you found that helpful. If any of you are suffering from frozen shoulder, I'm in the middle of building my website. I say all this because I record these videos and leave them up. I am in the middle of building my database, my website, my online tool, whatever it is. And there will be some advice around frozen shoulder and some options for you to look at some exercises and so on in the future. So if you see this video in the future and you think, wow, what else could I do? Then you know where to go. I'll be putting the link It's just jennyallison.com if I haven't put it on, because I'm like that. I forget these things. All right. I have done another video on rotator cuffs, so if you want to watch that, it'll be on my YouTube channel or my Facebook group. All right. See you later.